Week's lecture, we continued our discussion of the social information processing model, focusing on this issue of beliefs and how we can impact beliefs in order to impact behavior. And in particular, we're interested in the use of interpersonal communication, our capacity in a leadership position to simply tell people things and hope that that then subsequently impacts their behavior. So the kind of things that we would tell people is quality matters, and we would like them to believe that, and that their behavior follows from it. So interpersonal communication is fundamental to leadership, and it's fundamental to what you hear a lot of times talking about leaders being, great communicators. We really introduce this by saying that leaders need to be great communicators in the sense of great perceivers and understanders of people. And the social information processing model, in particular, tells us a key part of effective leadership communication is understanding the implication of this beliefs to perception linkage, and in particular, how perception impacts people's receptivity to the social information, what we tell them. Do they believe us or not? And that fundamental to this is this notion of a frame of reference bias, or it's exactly the same thing as an expectation bias. We use the terminology of both expectation bias and frame of reference bias because in perception research, they talk about expectation bias. In communication research, they talk about frame of reference bias, but they're really talking about the same thing, is that the person's perceptions impact what it is that they hear and understand. In organizational setting, formal position that people occupy has a big impact on how it's their experiences, impact on experiences. It has an impact on ultimately how they see problems, what solutions that they see as viable. And so in organizations in particular, we have significant frame of reference bias that we need to be aware of in how information flows in the organization. One of the tools that you were exposed to in the reading is this notion of speaking to a person's experience. And again, this says, as a communicator, to the degree we understand people, we understand their perspective, we can create a common language that we can speak to them with, something they're going to understand, their kind of perspective on the world. And again, that's just saying, I understand you have an expectation bias. My way of getting to your beliefs to impact your behavior is to basically appeal to that expectation bias. We can speak to a person's experience. And and this also includes kind of images and interests that directly are going to basically open up this channel, right? It makes it easier for us to get information through. One of the things we talked about, and this is in line with the discussion of kind of the symbolic aspects of leadership communication, is this notion of listening to be heard. And this, as we talked about, it has both an impact on the person's perception of our interest in actually communicating versus telling. So listening, creates an interpersonal environment and mode of receptivity on the part of the other person. The other thing is that by listening, first we get insights into the beliefs and expectations of the person that we're listening to, and that allows us to better communicate with them. And it also allows us to, probe and kind of better understand their position before we try and give them information. And very important is this kind of trust reciprocity relationship. So on the interpersonal side, we're really talking about very much the person-to-person communication. But we also took that a step further and said in the one-to-many problem, there are important issues of establishing credibility, of are people going to understand us, and we also mentioned the really terrific difficulty associated with kind of the consistency demands of that one-to-many communication and the expectations that get projected on us by the followers we have. And we'll continue to take this up as we move forward. Probably overexposed in Utah, but still, I think, very insightful book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders. And in particular, Covey talks about this importance of listening first, and talks about if you listen first, then you can expect other people will hear you. And it's just a very powerful technique, and for lots of reasons, but it also establishes and helps establish the people's trust and credibility relationship. A not as well known book, but I think a good one, is this notion of from Ed Shine, and we're going to read one of his articles when we talk about socialization, but he has gotten interested in this notion of inquiry and the power of being a listening leader. A very small, short book, about 100 pages, but I think a useful and good book, basically very insightful. So for week 6 then, again, our topic was interpersonal communication. Next week, we're going to be also talking about influencing beliefs, and the topic will be commitment.